Hi, it's Rob from Bush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Canoptek Reanimator. If you'd like to support the channel, our Coffee and Patreon pages are linked below. Now on to the video. So the first colour we're going to use is Citadel Leadbelcher. I'm going to use this to paint up the spindly bottom part of the legs, the almost like metal claws. Also the little blades on the front there, and a few little pieces of the Reanimator. Find what's handy to have is the picture on the Games Workshop site, or a picture of it on the internet up on a screen or monitor that you can reference when you're painting. I always find that dead handy. Painted some of the tubes going to the neck and the weaponry there too. I'm going to use some Vallejo Black to paint all of the joints on the Reanimator, also the bulk of the body underneath that carapace it has on top there as well. Now, despite the size of it and the length of time it takes to paint, it's actually a very short video because there's not really that many colours on it. It's quite limited on its palette, which is quite cool. Now I'm going to use Citadel Runelord brass. I'm just going to touch up those sections that we want to have that colour. So any bits that you might have gone over with a bit of the black or a bit of the Leadbelcher, you just touch those up with the relevant colours. Next up, we're going to use some Citadel Kanotek Alloy. I'm going to mainly use this for the head of the Reanimator, and also the two largest sections of carapace on its back. Like so. Next up, we're going to be using some Vallejo White, which is just a pure white colour. No hints of any other shade to it or anything like that, it's just pure white. I'm going to use this to paint all of the kind of orbs that are on it, that you want to have that glowing green effect with the Tesseract glow. I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome, using this to do some of the sort of struts and supports, and also some of the little bits that look almost like they'd be part of a hydraulic kind of thing. I think they are just struts or supports, but I thought give them that chrome look so they can have a nice bit of shine to them. Now I'm going to move on to the shades. We're starting with Cryptek Armourshade Gloss. I'm going to use this on all of the Runelord brass and the Canoptek Alloy. I'm going to try and give it a slightly thinner coat on the Canoptek Alloy. So it'll rather nicely shade all those areas, and where you've got that really bright shine from the metallic colour, this will dull it down, keep the shine, the glossiness, but it'll make all those details really stand out. So now a little overexposed Apothecary white contrast is being applied to all of the orbs where you want that Tesseract glow. So I'm applying it to all of these, trying to get it to pull more towards the edges of the orbs, and also on some of the tubes that have been painted white too, that are going to be making those glow. So we're trying to get a little bit of that shade at the start and the end of each tube as well, or where it joins onto maybe a support or something like that. Now some Biel-Tan green, and I've applied that to the kind of engine-y bit at the very back. And then we're just going to use a tiny little bit of Biel-Tan green around the very edge of each of the orbs, just so that's ever so slightly darker than the Apothecary White. You can see that you now have that hint of green around the edges of a lot of the tubes and a lot of the orbs and things like that. That's what we're aiming for. And when we put that glow back on, that'll give that a nice bit of darkness at one part, and then we'll apply a little bit more white to them. That'll give that nice brightness that you want in the middle of the glow. Now I'm going to start applying the Runelord brass. What we want to do here is mainly apply to the areas that are going to be catching the light on the areas that were Runelord brass. So if it's on the underside, you don't really want to be doing too much, maybe just around the edges of some of the battle damage so the light catches them and reflects. That is a really, really metallic colour, this really, really bright, I find. Does reflect the light amazingly well. So if you do highlights with it or with the Kanotek Alloy underneath shaded areas and things like that, they will stand out, which is really, really cool. Next up, it's going to be Canotek Alloy. I'm going to use this to recolour the top part, making sure you leave the shade in the recesses, and also some of those blotches and discolorations. It doesn't have to be 100% smooth, this layer, because you do want it to look as though it's been inactive for many, many years and a little bit worn and weathered. So just by leaving that ever so slightly streaky when you paint it, or ever so slightly blotchy, you do get that old look to it. It's not clean and smooth. You also want to be thinking about applying this to the Runelord brass areas where they're going to be catching the most light as the first highlight. Now I'm going to mix some Model Air Chrome with the Canoptek Alloy, and that is going to be just to kind of highlight those details and dents and things like that. Also any edges and ridges and stuff, you want to use this to highlight those and get them nice and shiny so those details really stand out against the shininess of the rest of the miniature. Like so. Next, we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo White. This is going to be used to recolour some of the orbs and the tubing parts where we haven't got much shade on, the bits that you want to be glowing a lot. So we make these brighter so that when you put that Tesseract glow on, they really do show it up and show it as nice and bright, while the areas with the Apothecary White and the Biel-Tan green will show those darker shades and darker tones, so it looks like the centre is glowing a lot brighter than the rest. Now if you've managed to keep all the black on the miniature fine and you haven't gone over it, then you can just use German grey here. I was lucky enough not to have used any black to cover up any smudges or anything like that. So if you have got any little marks on the black areas, you can go over them with black and then go onto the German grey. Using this German grey to highlight the black, putting it on the areas that would be catching light. Now final highlight of the black areas, we're going to use some Citadel Mechanicus standard grey. We're going to use that to put in edge highlights on all those black areas, pick out all the details just so that they all really stand out and you can see them clearly. You can hear any noise in the background here. I've got a tiny kitten, which is Linnet 2, who is attacking my feet and playing about under the desk, and has just climbed up onto the desk and is now chewing the headphone cable. Next up, we've got Citadel Tesseract Glow. I'm going to use that to paint all of the orbs and those white cables. You can see here when I'm applying it that you have the darker areas around the edges and that light glow in the middle, which is what we wanted with those Biel-Tan green and the Apothecary White sections on each of the orbs. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Leadbelcher and reapply some colour to the blades on the front and these sections, and also the weapons on the top. Don't want to go too wild, leave some areas with the shade on and things like that, because you don't want them to look all brand new and fresh. You do want them to have that weathered and slightly knackered look to them. Now I'm going to be using some Vallejo Model Air Chrome, and this is going to be to do the edge highlights on the details, those scrapes and any of the built-in details on those legs and blades. Now this does have a really high pigmentation, so it does stand out really well. Looks really cool once it's applied. Currently Linnet 2 is sat behind my head and purring, so if you can hear her purring, that is why. She's about 3 inches from the microphone. And this is the finished Canoptek Reanimator. It's a cracking miniature, really big, and I'm really pleased with how that turned out. Hopefully it'll do some use in the battles. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content, please consider supporting us through our Ko-fi and Patreon pages, linked below. Thanks very much.